So, welcome to another episode of Yo-Yo Talk. I'm Doc Lucky, and I'm here to facilitate great discussions on yo-yos, collections, history, and whatever it has to do with yo-yos. Last week, we started out great with Tim Simcoe winning that lightning round, that wonderful Rev 1 wide load Diffeo, mint in package, signed by Frank Diffeo himself. For the first time ever I can remember, the Nickinator was skunked in both the lightning round and in the grand prize pop quiz as well, with Rick Rentz winning the big prize package. However, the Nickinator was complaining about being worn out by having so many groupies, so I'm sure he no longer has that problem after that episode, and it serves him right. But I'm sure the Nickinator is out there tonight, ready to draw blood. We had a fantastic guest, Frank Diffeo, and a great interview, but apparently I was the only one that knew it was a great interview because I was the only one that could hear Frank. The show had very poor audio connection from the other end while we were trying to do that live audio interview. We were doing a live audio interview because the video connection just wasn't working at all. And it turns out we should have tried using a Western Union telegram session or perhaps Morse code over a telegraph. But no, our producer, Sean, felt that we could do this fine by holding a microphone up to the iPhone. And he was wrong, which is a bit surprising since he does have a certification from the Acme School of Television Production from their online 1-hour course on how to run a live yo-yo show effectively. So that's why Sean is not live in the studio tonight. It's a simple fact that I thought a mistake that severe could only be done by a pseudo-thinking beating heart zombie. And if you don't know what one of those is, look it up in the Zombie Cause Dictionary. Anyhow, I decided to have him tested. We have certain devices which are excellent in testing for zombies. And so we ran this little zombie identification test that you're seeing right now. With the zombies feel no pain at all, and there's no harm done. So the good news is that Sean is not a zombie. The bad news is Sean did feel a lot of pain and he's still healing from those wounds. So he couldn't make it in at least live tonight, although he may check in a little bit later remotely. We will see if his digits on his hand are now functional. So this week my topic is the ancient history of the yo-yo and how we got it all wrong. And I promise to rock the world here in a little bit. Many of you will hate me at the end of the show because I'm going to disprove a lot of things that we thought we knew about the ancient history of the yo-yo, but that's okay. If you hate me, I have very broad shoulders. So let's jump right into what our great prize package will be for tonight. Here's our prize package for this evening's pop quiz contest, which will be at the end of the show. Here we have a collector's guide to 20th century yo-yos by me, well known to instantly make you a half-inch taller if you carry this around with you and stand on it. And this little crappy gem is a Orbit yo-yo, which is a non-yo-yo faking itself as a yo-yo. For 98 cents, you can experience what it's like to be an astronaut playing with this toy. Just like growing sea monkeys is like diving the Great Barrier Reef. And there's an ultra cool Doc Lucky yo-yo. Every yo-yo collector should have one of those in the collection. And here is a Pee Wee Herman yo-yo. I will say that this is one piece in what I call our politically incorrect prize package. You don't want to do what Pee Wee did in a theater, or for that matter, during a church service.
If you expect to remain the lead figure in a children's show, this arguably may be the most famous of the Spectra Star yo-yo series. And there off to the right is a Duncan Glow yo-yo pin, useful for riding in the dark for about 7 seconds. And just above it, we have an American Spinners yo-yo. These were one-piece wood yo-yos made in the 80s, late 80s, I believe. There were a lot of different variations of these, paint variations, and of course, jeweled variations, which are highly collectible now. Not the best playing yo-yo in the world, but nice display yo-yos. And there's a Sir Duncan top from the 60s, a Fiend magazine ad promo yo-yo. Here's an OTC, that's Oriental Trading Company, cheap tin yo-yo that's about 20 years old. If you were a really cheap Santa Claus, you might throw one of these in a stocking, but I would beware of having X-Lax chocolate chips in your cookies for next year. Just a warning to Santas that think OTC yo-yos are cool stocking stuffers. And there's a midnight special, about 20 years old, a 60s Big D Dell's Tricksters. That's a very nice, highly collectible yo-yo from the 60s. Black Mambas, of course, that one's about 20 years old as well. Nice throwing yo-yo from the late 90s. Here's a Lumar tin yo-yo, probably from the 70s, maybe late 60s. That's the Be a Sport series. There's several different ones, pretty collectible. I think those are largely made in England, so a little harder to find here in the United States. There's a Pro Yo 3, also about 20 years old. Off to the left there is an astronaut yo-yo. This is actually a real yo-yo. It's tin, unlike that Orbit yo-yo we talked about. Fiend magazine sticker with a couple of counterweights, a couple of carving yo-yos. And oh, here's the other addition to our politically incorrect prize package, the General Lee yo-yo. That's one of a series of 3 from the Dukes of Hazzard. If you don't understand why that might be considered politically incorrect, just examine the photo very closely and you will see. So let's see what the value of our prize package is for this week. And there you have it, $228. This could all be yours if you answer the questions correctly in our pop quiz at the end of the show. Good luck to everybody.
A nice prize package for Nick this evening. I know the Nickinator is going through withdrawal symptoms. He has the shakes and the sweats. I don't know if that will keep him from the giant grand prize package. So it's a little fix right now that he really needs. A taste, just a little taste to calm the nerves. So we are going to get ready to jump right into our lightning round. And if the Nickinator should win, well, this will allow him to get hold of himself. And should he lose, I don't know if he can make it to the end of the show.
I need to win. I need to win.
Without having a win. So you guys decide whether or not you are going to have mercy on the Nickinator and let him win that lightning round so he has a shot at that grand prize, or will he just be hugging the toilet at the end of the show because he can no longer function that long without a win? It's a shame to see people in this state, but it is a choice. You can become a yo-yo quiz addict or not. The Nickinator chose his path episodes ago, and now he must live with it. So, to the Nickinator, here is the chance for your fix. But first, let's take a look at what everybody will be playing for in the lightning round.
Thanks to Frank Diffio again for another great donation for this lightning round. This is a 2004 World's Edition GTO Diffio. There were only 18 of these made, and best of all, it is signed by Frank Diffio, mint in package, 18 of them. That's it. The lightning round.
Okay, there it is. Nickinator, this win would be like a nickel bag to get you through to the end of the show. You need it, you're desperate. What will you sacrifice to win it? What will others do to keep you from it? Let's find out right now. Here is the lightning round. Who holds the open world record for the longest fixed axle sleeper to extinction? I'm going to give you a little hint here. If you know who that is, you've got an advantage. We're looking for the names to come in now. Who is this guy setting the world record for the longest fixed axle sleeper to extinction? Just getting ready for, nope, that's the first answer is not correct.
No, we're still going.
So we got the answers coming in. I'm checking them now. First answer was wrong. Second answer is wrong coming through. You better be quick, guys. Who is that guy that was in the video? Who is that guy in the video? I think Jim maybe. Tim Redmond. Yes, Tim Simcoe. Got it right. Congratulations. Good job. Good job. I should have what the record is. It's 3 minutes and something, I think. That was the fixed axle yo-yo. That was the Yo-Yo Jam DJ. I don't think any of the records that are set with fixed axles are by any other yo-yo. So great answer to that question. And Tim, you are another winner, so you're going to win that great yo-yo. So. Okay, last week I said I was going to rock the yo-yo world when it comes to the beginning history of the yo-yo. And let me start by saying that we got the ancient history of the yo-yo wrong from the beginning. And I'm as much to blame as anyone. If you have a copy of my book, Lucky's Collector's Guide to 20th Century Yo-Yos, History and Values, you will note that the history I give in my website at DocLucky'sYoYoTalk.com differs from the book. And that is because I know more about the early history of the yo-yo than I did 20 years ago when I wrote the book. The exact origin of the yo-yo will, in all probability, never be known. But I now realize many of the historical pieces that I thought were depicting yo-yos weren't. One of my favorite quotes from the Immune is, "Conventional wisdom is the worst wisdom of all." And the yo-yo community, unfortunately, has been using conventional wisdom for decades, repeating fabrications because they create an engaging storyline that we would all like to believe. Unfortunately, these oft-repeated origin stories are creative but not factual. Many countries have claimed the invention of the yo-yo, but the documented evidence is lacking. Some historians argue multiple site origin, but currently the most accepted theory, at least in my mind, is that the toy originated in Asia around 1000 BC. And although there are no records of the yo-yo in Asia during this period, the presence of the Diablo can be documented. The Diablo, I think we all know, is sometimes called the Chinese yo-yo. It's very similar to the yo-yo, and actually offspring is kind of like a Diablo. And I believe that the yo-yo evolved from the Diablo or vice versa. And a few years ago, a Japanese vase depicting skeletons playing both the yo-yo and the Diablo was discovered. Now, if you've been to my house in the last few years and seen my collection, I'm sure you have seen this vase because it's now the centerpiece of my collection. This Amari Japanese vase may be dated as old as the mid-17th century, and it may be the earliest known piece of artwork depicting a yo-yo. Right now, everybody is going, what? But I will come back to that later and explain, so keep watching. So just to show you the difficulties with histories and how history can change, I want to give you a little backstory on this yo-yo vase because I think it's very important in the history of the yo-yo, and it's important showing how history of that vase has changed multiple times. But I think I've got it correct now. So several years ago, I saw this vase advertised on eBay. It was listed as Chinese vase, broken but repaired, 150 years old, skeletons playing yo-yos. So when I looked at the images of the vase on eBay, I noticed that one of the skeletons was using it as a yo-yo. The other ones were clearly using the object as Diablos, or the Chinese yo-yo. And since I had proposed years ago to the yo-yo community that the yo-yo had derived from the Diablo, or vice versa, maybe 1,000 years ago, I thought, wow, this is an illustrated example historically showing this possible theory of mine, although 150 years ago was not that long ago considering the long history of the yo-yo. But it supported this Diablo yo-yo connection, and I thought it would be worthwhile to have the piece in my collection. So I asked my wife if this could be my Christmas present for the year. And it was an $800 buy it now, and her being a wonderful woman she is, she agreed, and I got this big nice vase for Christmas. Well, when I turned the vase upside down and looked at the bottom, I noticed there were Chinese letters on the bottom. So I thought, well, I should show this to my sister-in-law, who's from mainland China, and see if she could interpret to find out a little bit more about the vase. Well, when she looked at the letters, she said, these aren't Chinese characters. These are Japanese characters. So I thought, wow, maybe the history they gave on eBay is wrong. Clearly, they got the country wrong. Maybe they got the age wrong too. So anyway, she sent the writings to a friend who was Japanese and was a director of a museum of Asian antiquities. And she says, I can't tell you how old the vase is, but I can tell you what dynasty it came from. Whoa! Dynasty! She reported that it was between 500 and 1,100 years old. Now, wow, what a game changer that is. How lucky I was to have an expert look at this and give me some history. So fast forward several years to a show called Extreme Collectors. They had given me a call and asked if I had anything new in my collection, and I said, yes, I do have this vase that's between 500 and 1,100 years old, and it may be the first piece of art to depict a yo-yo being played. And they said, we'll get back to you. And then the next day they call and said, the host of this show just happens to be an expert in Asian antiquities. So we showed the pictures to him, and he wants to come and talk about your collection and, of course, the vase. So on Extreme Collectors, the expert comes on and says exactly the same things I told them that I was told about the vase, and it is 500 to 1,100 years old. It's Japanese. It was probably a funeral urn or of an emperor or somebody really high up, and there's a lot of gold leaf, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He then tells me it was valuable enough that a museum repaired it 150 years ago, and I asked him how he knew this fact. And he said it had to do with the materials, the staples that they used to repair these vases. They take each little piece, they hand drill a hole, and then they put a staple in after they've cooled it down, and then when it gets back to the normal temperature, it expands, and that's what holds these pieces in place. So big vases like this were commonly broken because they came over in sailing ships. So apparently during certain time periods, the museums used different metals in their staples, so people that deal in antiquities can look at the staples that were used and tell about when the item was repaired. So he knew this was repaired 150 years ago. And then he asked me how much I paid for it, and I said, well, we paid $800. And then he asked me, do you want to know what it's worth? And I said, yeah, of course. I figured, well, it's obviously worth more than $800, maybe $2,000 or $3,000. So in my mind, I was working on a, wow, I better give him a wow reaction when he tells me it's worth a couple thousand and pretend to look really surprised. And then he said, it's worth $80,000. Well, I didn't have to fake any reaction. Matter of fact, I almost got bleeped out because of my reaction, but I caught myself just in the last second. So after the camera lights went off, I asked him, I said, is that a serious value, or were you just making up that as a BS to get a reaction on the show? And he looked me right in the eye and he said, I can go out and sell this vase tomorrow for $80,000. And then he says, and that's not even considering the fact that this historically may be the earliest piece of art depicting a yo-yo. He says, this is museum quality stuff, and he says, you never know what that's going to be worth. So I was feeling pretty good about it all, and I told this story to a lot of folks, and of course, that episode appeared on national television. I think it was on the National Geographic Channel. So fast forward another couple of years, my brother, who is a world traveler and has been everywhere you can possibly imagine, has an amazing amount of esoteric knowledge stored up about foreign countries and cultures and stuff like that. He's visiting me over Christmas, and he's looking at the vase and the characters on it and says, I think this is an Amari vase. And I don't know how he pulled that out of his butt, but he did. So we started looking up on the internet, and sure enough, based on the artwork and the patterns and the lettering, it looks like it's an Amari vase. So the big issue I had to wrap my head around is that the Amari vases were produced in about the mid-1700s, early, but not 500 to 1100 years ago, and therein lies the problem with deciphering the early history on anything. I had two supposedly experts tell me something completely wrong. But even though the vase may be only a bit over 250 years old, it still may be the earliest piece of artwork depicting a yo-yo, and here's why. As we all know, in most every book out there on the yo-yo, including my own book, we list the yo-yo as being an ancient Greek toy and this has just been repeated and repeated and repeated. Photos of these antiquities have been shown over and over again in books and articles, and they've mistakenly identified these items as depicting yo-yos. And again, I will reference a quote from the Immune. Lies undiscovered become truths. And in reality, there's only one reference that we derive all this history of the yo-yo being suggested as a Greek origin. And this is from the German book, Greek and Sicilian Vase Pictures by Otto Benendorf, published in 1869. Now, I got a copy of this years ago, and I saw the diagrams and all that, but I couldn't read German, so it took me several years to finally get an interpretation of this. And when I was reading the interpretations, all of a sudden things started to go, wait a minute. So both of these items that started the Greek origin of the yo-yo are discussed in this book. The first was a vase which presumably depicts a boy playing a yo-yo. And I think we're all familiar with that image of the boy playing the yo-yo that's on this vase. And how do we know the boy is playing a yo-yo? Well, because there were ceramic terracotta discs that were yo-yos found around the same time period. And so this is all it could be, because we have the vase, which shows a boy playing a yo-yo, and therefore the disc that we have must be a yo-yo, confirming each other. But what if we found out one was not what they said it was then? Then we have to look at what the other thing was also not what we thought it was. And this is exactly what happened. Neither one of these items depict yo-yos. And I will repeat this because this may come as a shock. I am going against the face of everything we have been taught, everything that's in every book about yo-yos. Neither one of these items depict yo-yos, and here's why. First, let's take a look at the boy playing the yo-yo vase. It sure does look like a yo-yo to me. And because what else could it possibly be? An object on a string being held in a hand by a young man? So if it looks like it, it must be it. There can be no other explanation on the subject. But Occam's razor comes into play here. And if you're not familiar with the philosophical principle of Occam's razor, in simple terms, it kind of means if there exists two explanations for an event, that the one that requires the smallest number of assumptions is typically correct. Another way of saying it is, the more assumptions you have to make, the more unlikely an explanation. For example, if you drive by a weather station at night and you see a UFO, and because it floats and it appears round and it's not a plane, It has no lights like an aircraft. Therefore, you assume it's a flying saucer. And we've heard that before. But somebody tells you they set off weather balloons at the time you were driving by. Could it be a weather balloon? You say, no, it was definitely a flying saucer based on all the assumptions you made. This is a clear violation of Occam's razor. The simplest explanation requiring the least amount of assumptions is that it is a weather balloon. So, now let's look at the young man playing the yo-yo on the vase. So in 1843, Ludwig Ross, a Greek historian, certainly not an expert on yo-yos, saw one of the terracotta discs that had been unearthed. And since he was familiar with a toy, the yo-yo, they called it bandlore back then, and it looked like it, he made the suggestion. He didn't say it was a yo-yo. He just suggested it could be a yo-yo. And he based that proposition on the fact there was a Greek vase depicting a boy that looked like it was playing a yo-yo from the same period. So they're each complementing each other, proving each other is what they are. Now, there's not one shred of evidence in any Greek literature mentioning the yo-yo as a toy. If it was common enough to put on the vase, you would think there would have been some reference to the toy in ancient writings, but there is none. But there is something that was extremely common in Greek culture, which was written about and well known, and it is called an erybalos. And this is a small ceramic round container that held scented oils that everyone carried around because people had a lot of body odor, and it was common practice to use smearing these scented oils all over themselves on a regular basis. And it was even part of religious ceremonies and death ceremonies and all kinds of stuff like that. So, how did they carry around this frequently used erybalos? They would attach it to a long leather cord. So let's look at these images closely. You will notice a design on the object at the end of the cord. It would have no meaning particularly to a yo-yo. But look at this object which has been identified as an erybalos. It has a similar design in a different piece of art. And here is another vase where they identify this as an erybalos by a different historian, not even considering that's a yo-yo. And that sure looks very similar to what we see on the initial vase, and look at those markings. So now let's apply Occam's razor to this common, well-known Greek object that is round and is attached to a long leather thong that any Grecian might be carrying around. And it is depicted in the artwork of the period, plus it has a design which was used on other pieces of artwork that are erybalos. So to say this is a youth playing a yo-yo, you have to make these assumptions. The cord we are seeing is not a leather thong, but a yo-yo string. The object is a yo-yo, which has never been described in ancient Greek literature, but it is not an erybalos, which is commonly described in Greek literature. The markings which are used in a similar fashion to designate erybalos in other artwork are random markings on this piece without any significance. And finally, a different vase with a similar drawing, which has always been designated an erybalos, is incorrect. As you can see, this requires many more assumptions to come to the conclusion this is indeed a yo-yo. Occam's razor would predict that this is indeed an erybalos, not a yo-yo. But what about the story of ancient Grecian rites of passage with young boys giving up their yo-yos and other toys as they enter adulthood? And what about those terracotta yo-yos they found that were in ancient Greece? Doesn't that give us evidence? Well, yes, if they were indeed yo-yos. But let's first look at the rites of passage malarkey. There is no ancient Greek writing suggesting that youth gave up their yo-yos in rites of passage. The only documentation of this theory is from the 20th century, more than 2,500 years later, and it's based solely on the finding of these two ornate terracotta discs that people thought might be yo-yos based on the graphics on the vase that we now know is not a yo-yo. Now, these ancient Grecian discs, which only one historian suggested the possibility of being a yo-yo, even making it clear he wasn't sure, he was only throwing the idea out there, Most ancient Grecian historians do not believe this. They believe they are bobbins or spools. And I was fortunate enough to be able to go to the Metropolitan Museum in New York, where one of the more famous of these discs was on display. And even in the display description itself, it refers to these as bobbins or perhaps yo-yos, as some people would like to believe. That does make them more interesting to the general public if we call them yo-yos, especially because it's in every single book you have read about yo-yos. But is it true? So let's look at this presumed yo-yo closely. First, it's terracotta, not the most ideal material to make a toy out of. Second, let's look at what's on the yo-yo. A very elaborate design, all showing dramatic scenes of Greek mythology. Not your typical fare for a children's toy. And third, we do know that bobbins and spools were a very important part of the feminine cultural side of the Greeks. Finally, notice that there are 2 holes drilled in this disc through both sides. What possible function could this have as a yo-yo? But for some other reason, especially for hanging a decorative bobbin, yes. And finally, where were these yo-yos discovered? Not in a temple full of children's toys, but both in the grave sites of adult women holding them in their hands. So let's look at this through the viewfinder of Occam's razor. On one hand, we have a bobbin, well known to occur in Greek culture, drilled holes in the disc so it could be mounted or hung, elaborate artwork which you would expect on an object coveted by an adult, not a child. The themes of the artwork were adult themes, not those of children. And finally, the object was found in an adult woman's grave. Now, compare that to the assumptions that must be made to make this a yo-yo. A toy never described in ancient literature, made of a material unsuitable for a yo-yo, no explanation of why holes were drilled in the object, an unusually large size. These were big. These are bigger than in diameter than the Duncan Award big jumbo award yo-yos. And the gap is large too, much too large for a yo-yo. And the object was not buried with children or in temples where children were going through rites of passage, but they were in the hands of dead adult women. And the supposition is that a story created in the 20th century ties all these assumptions together into making this a yo-yo rather than a bobbin. This, folks, is a bobbin. It is not a yo-yo. As much as we would like to make it a yo-yo, and that vase image, as much as we would like to make that a boy playing a yo-yo, this is not a yo-yo, it is an Erebalos. So now you know the true story of what the yo-yo ancient history is not. You can choose to continue to tell the story of the ancient Grecian yo-yos, but I would prefer everybody in the yo-yo community that cares about the truth on history to tell everybody what these things really are. So what do we know about the early history of the yo-yo? Linguistics experts have determined the word yo-yo, which has been used in the Philippines for hundreds of years to describe the toy, is also etymologically, and I'll say that again, etymologically Oriental in origin. All the evidence I mentioned suggests an Asian origin of the toy. Regardless of the actual provenance, the yo-yo is undoubtedly an ancient toy that has survived the centuries, and we will probably never know the true origin of the yo-yo. Right now, I believe this Japanese vase that I have in my collection is the earliest documented piece of artwork that depicts a yo-yo. I also believe that the yo was probably invented centuries before the vase was created, and what I'm sure of is the yo-yo was not an ancient Greek toy, and the history we used to believe we know is an illusion. So, I know everybody feels like they just sat through Doc Lucky's classroom on yo-yo history, and everybody knows at the end of class there is a test, but with a test, this test, there is going to be a grand prize, which you have already seen. So I am going to jump right into that pop quiz final round for our grand prize. Good luck to everyone, including the Nickinator.
one champion. First to answer both questions in the Facebook comments wins. Get ready.
Anybody can guess on. I have a feeling the originator is probably fast looking these up. So the Sidewinder was distributed in one state, and what year was the wrong. So I'm still looking at those answers coming in. I think Sean is on the line too, and he's checking the answers as they come through. Nothing yet?
One state right, but we haven't seen that year at all.
We're looking for, we've one, John, state of confusion, love it. And by the way, state of confusion is not the right answer. Still throwing up answers, guys. Keep them coming. Let's see. Oh, no, we're okay. I see the state coming up a couple times right. Now we're needing to work on that year. It is the Pro-Yo, the Playmax Pro-Yo. Think back, folks, when that might have come out.
You'd think after someone got it wrong the first time, you wouldn't see people continuing to enter it, but you know.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you a hint so this doesn't go on forever. It was in the decade of the 70s. Okay, so that is the year. You got to still get the state right. We've got several of the state rights now. Oh, we got one really close. Really close. State and that year, we're still seeing ones coming through.
Oh, we're getting close.
We're getting close, man. Some people are tiptoeing around the answer. It's they're still coming in. Oh, okay. Well, we're hitting in that 70s now. Keep on those 70s coming. There's only so many years in the 70s, but you got to hit the right state though. So some of you aren't sure on the state. Oh, another one really close. Oh, we got somebody with the right state, but the wrong year, but the right state. That was, right year, but the wrong state. Wait a minute. Here we go. Oh, I don't believe this. Is that right? I think I just saw it come through. Let me check.
I don't think so, Luck.
Yes, sir. Right here. Check out. I'm spinning down here. Wait a minute. I got to find this. I've lost it, but I saw the correct answers coming in. Look up at Mike Hilton. Look at Mike Hilton.
I'm pretty sure Mike Hilton is a year off still. That's every year.
No, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. Are you sure? Wait a minute. I'm trying to find it. They're coming in so fast here.
I can't say it. Would you like me to tell you the year?
No. Let me see. I'm scanning through here. I thought I saw Hilton with the right answer, but maybe I didn't. Oh, wait a minute. No. Here it is. I'm sorry. I've got Tim Simcoe with the correct answer.
Hold on, let me double check.
Double check on that. I'm just double checking everybody here. It looks like Tim Simcoe got the. Tim Simcoe. Strong work, Tim. A double hit. Now, let me just qualify that. The correct answer is California 1974. So right now it looks like Tim Simcoe won both the lightning round and the grind prize. But I will say this, that we're going to have to check the time code at the end. I'll double check because Facebook is doing some funny things. Sometimes it shows up on our Facebook feed, and then when we go to the end of the show, we get actually a different time code. But right now, Tim is the amazing winner of this, and congratulations to Tim Simcoe for the big win, and also congratulations to Tim Simcoe for winning that limited edition Diffio 2004 World GTO, one of only 18. The Nickinator has been completely shut out for 2 shows in a row, and I'm sure he's driving, or not driving, he's on the train now to a yo-yo trivia rehab center. I hope the Nickinator's recovery is successful and a quick one. So please, everyone, if you agree with my changes to the early yo-yo history, share this episode with your friends to enlighten them. And if you don't agree, let me know why, but cite references. I want to get this right. Next week, we have an amazing legend on the show as our guest. He is definitely old enough to actually have been there when they were making those old Greek bobbins. The amazing Bob Rule, a.k.a. Mr. Yo-Yo. Bob is in the Yo-Yo Hall of Fame, and he is also the winner of the Lifetime Achievement Award, the Harvey Lowe Lifetime Achievement Award. He started demonstrating for Dunkin' in '52 and continued to demonstrate until they went out of business in 1965. So this will be an opportunity to talk with the amazing Bob Rule, a yo-yoing legend, and think of your questions now, as this is a not to be missed episode. So I will see you guys next week, and as always, you can never have too many yo-yos. This is Doc.